Fireside Chats with Grandma continue. Week 2. We're here with Grandma, and our first topic today is transportation. Way back before cars clogged our roads, there was a different way to get around, and it pretty much was the only way to get around. Grandma's going to tell us how she used to get to school, how she used to get to work.
Well, in those days you had two good things how to get your feet. You walked. If you were lucky, maybe you saw somebody that had a wagon or something and they'd pick you up and take you if you knew them. But I was born on 21, so they were starting to have cars. But I always walked to school. And if I couldn't walk, it was too far, like in high school, I went on the streetcar. So,
Great-grandkids don't know what a streetcar is.
Streetcar? That's a tram, like a train, only it's just one car with seats in it. It's called you guys don't know about streetcars. Yeah, they had rails down the middle of the streets in big cities with a little train. We always called them a streetcar. And you got on, it was 5 cents or 10 cents, certain thing, like we do a bus today. And they were called streetcars. And take the streetcar to where you had to go if you wanted. My mom wanted to go downtown, why she'd get on the streetcar to go downtown. You'd walk to where they had the rails, so they didn't have them on every street, just big main streets. And then his grandpa, he said he walked 4 miles in the snow every day to school. And he did, when he couldn't get a ride. And especially when he stayed for football practice, it was pretty cold coming home on those snowy days if he didn't get a ride home. But it was 4 miles to the high school, and he'd walk it in the morning or walk it in the evening. And we had a Model A, my folks. And that's how we came from Portland to California after we lost our home. And that old Model A, all 5 of us, the 3 kids and my parents, came down to California trying to find work, because there wasn't any work in Portland, Oregon for my dad. Now, let's see, what else? And of course, we never used the car. It was very important. There weren't too many gas stations.
Yeah, all right. Let's move on to a topic that was before your time or a little during your time, but we'll move to Grandpa and Bebops, and I know there's some good stories about going to the mines.
Well, when Bebops would go on a binge, as Mumsy would say, and I went to the saloon, and instead of beer, he'd have hard liquor. Well, that was not good, because he couldn't stop drinking it, and that gave him a real headache. And yet he couldn't stop. And Stan always knew that he couldn't eat his lunch because he'd have a big headache all day. And so he'd meet him coming home from work, and he'd eat his lunch, which was usually 2 or 3 sandwiches with homemade bread and pie and fruit. And he'd eat it. But he was a growing boy. But he knew when his father had a headache, he didn't eat his lunch. So Stan would help him out.
That sounds like the lunch of a champion. Speaking of Grandpa, the great-grandkids need to know, how did you meet great-grandpa?
Well, that was something too. He'd come out to California after he broke his toe in the gold mine, after he thought he had going to make the majors. I have a picture for all you grandsons to see of him with Dizzy Dean sitting in a chair with stars in his eyes because he was going to get to try out for the major leagues when he went back. And he went home to Colorado and worked in the gold mines, and someone dropped a load of ore on his toe and broke it. So, of course, he couldn't make it. So he sat at the bus stop, $25 to Colorado, $25 to California. He thought, no work in Colorado, and he was 19. Got on the bus, came to California where Uncle Wick was, and Ventura working in the oil field. And he got us through some friends who were going to Loyola, Italians again. They said, Stan, you're a three-letter man in high school. Why don't you come out and try and get a scholarship to Loyola? And he said, oh, I don't think I can. But he was happy to do it because he really wanted to go to college. He went out and met the president. And he said, but Father, I'm not Catholic. And the president looked at him and he said, Stan, we're not looking for Catholics. We're looking for football players. So I looked at Stan and his record and he said, I'll give you a chance. I'll pay your tuition. And we'll try you out. Well, of course, he made it because he was a good scholar and a good athlete. So therefore, meantime, I was going to the girls' college taking pre-nursing. So usually the girls' college would help the boys' college and vice versa. So they were having their big ham dinner and I went over and they told me, you stand here by the entrance and direct everybody to the line to get their ham dinner. Meantime, he'd come in from football practice, taking his shower. He was all wet, at the 5 o'clock shadow, hair still dripping. He comes into where the dinner was, and he sees me, I guess, and walks over and says, you're supposed to get my dinner. And I looked up at him and I said, you see that line over there? You go right over there, get in line, and you can get your own dinner. I turned away and walked away. He said he looked after me and thought, she'd make somebody a nice wife. Then he came over to our college. I was sitting with one of the sisters selling things. And he looked so handsome. He was shaven. He had his great tan jacket on and his curly dark hair. And he sees me and recognizes me. I didn't recognize him, naturally. Comes over and says, well, you wouldn't get my dinner, so I guess I won't buy anything. I bit my tongue, but what could I say with sister sitting there? I thought, oh well, thought no more about it. But he knew me now, and he knew my girlfriend, and he got a blind date with me, and that's how we started dating.
Tell us, where did you go for your first date?
Well, it was a dance at the Elks Club, a formal. He was lucky because he was late. And I had my one formal on waiting for him. I hadn't really met him yet, I thought. Meantime, while I was waiting, he was late. 2 other guys came by at different times and wanted me to go out. And I said, oh, I can't. I've got this formal on. If I hadn't had a formal on, I would have been gone. But I did. He finally showed up late. And when he came to the door, I thought, not too bad. But he looked at me and said, I'm so sorry I'm late. We had a baseball game with UCLA and it ran late. Well, I accepted his excuse. And we went to dance. And I had a great time. I always did when I went out on a date. I enjoyed myself. And he seemed to too. So that's how we met. And little by little, we dated a little more. Neither one of us wanted to be tied down at I was going to be a nurse, and you had to be a nurse to be an airline stewardess, fly and travel the world. He was going to become a coach and a teacher. He wanted to get his life in order. So we just dated, maybe once a month or so, for about 3 years. But then we sort of liked each other and knew it was going to be permanent. But when World War came, he enlisted the next day, but they wanted officers, so they let him finish, because he finished in May. And he asked me to marry him that May. And then he said, but maybe we better not. I might not come home alive or come home crippled. And I said, if you think you've chased me for 3 years and you're not going to marry me, you're out of your mind. So we had a secret wedding because neither of us were supposed to be married at that time. He was the 90-day wonder, they called, and I was in nursing. But later on in November, after he graduated and got his bars, I got permission to be married and went back and joined him in Chicago. We had a 5-day honeymoon was all. And it was during my vacation from the nursing school.
Well, that's it for this week. We'll be back in future Fireside Chats with wartime stories. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week by the fire.